I agree. That's a really important
Seth
point.
Andrew.
We shouldn't have for-profit, public schools. That doesn't make any sense. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. But the bottom line is we want to spend public dollars wisely, and charters are spending them far more wisely than traditional schools right now. I agree. If there's administrative bloat in the traditional system, we need to decentralize it so we have more efficient use of those dollars in classrooms.
State Senator Bill Perkins, you've been dying to get into the conversation here, and I know, interestingly, this issue of for-profit chains running schools, isn't a for-profit chain running the school that you once started, Victory?
Victory Schools is a for-profit chain that's making an extraordinary amount of money as a for-profit manager of these charter schools. And I think that, again, I can appreciate any parent that is hungry for their child's education, and I can understand why charter school parents are lining up in desperation to get into these charter schools, because the city is starving the public school system and focusing only on the charter schools. I believe that these charter schools are running operations that are behind the scenes, that are not transparent, that are not accountable, and my office will be organizing some hearings to begin to look at exactly what's going on with the charter schools in terms of their financing, in terms of their grades, in terms of who's managing them, who's not managing them, what's going on. So I think that they are not only in communities of color, but they're operating in the dark, and they're operating in ways that we would not allow any other schools in this city and perhaps even in this country to operate. Charter schools came on board with the promise that they could do better for less. They were never expected to be as compensated as much as per student as much as the regular public school. That was their whole point, that they could do better for less, and furthermore, that they didn't have to be in the public schools. They came on board with the expectation that they would be able to open up schools outside of the public school system and provide a first-class education for less. No sooner than they then got on board that they started advocating for more money. And not only that, they began advocating to be a part of those public schools, to take over those public schools. So it's a switcheroo kind of a thing. They came in with one expectation, and now they're in the public schools, creating all kinds of chaos. And this mayor is closing down schools with the plan of putting in these charter schools. And I think it's outrageous that they're getting paid so much.
Can I just respond as a parent? It's funny. My son plays a game that I call Backwards Day, and we go through the whole routine, everything backwards. I think the senator plays that also. I mean, it seems like he can't wait to support a school that's failing, like the one that's about to be closed. I've heard you publicly 3 weeks ago at Abyssinia support ACE Academy, which ought to be closed because the numbers are so bad because they're having sex in the hallways, right? Because they have 54 incidences that are 3 or 4 in one semester. And a school like that ought to be closed. In any other neighborhood, it would be closed. But because our standards are so low in Harlem, people like you, Bill Perkins, support schools like that and attack schools that are doing well, like Democracy Prep, simply because it's a charter. That's dogma. That's theoretical, which is fine. I don't know where your son is, but mine is doing well, and I have to be practical because he's 13 now. And for the other parents, the other 1461 who didn't make Democracy Prep this year, they feel the way I do, Senator, and they're your constituents.
Well, if I may, let me if I may.
Yes, Senator Perkins.
That's not fair. I'm not trying to undermine anybody's child in terms of the education opportunity that they deserve. All I'm saying is...
That's what your bill does.
Sir, the bill that I have talks about oversaturation, talks about co-location, talks about the fact that charter schools are being forced into public school settings, and there's all kinds of problems that are taking place. You know that, and I know that. Every school that's failing should be made into a successful school. Nobody's trying to limit opportunities for our children. The reason I've opened up the Sassuolo Charter School was because of the despair that has been taking place in our community. The problem is that the way that the charter school movement is taking place now is not a way that I believe is in the best interest of the public schools for all the children.
So I'd like to ask Seth Andrew a question. You said, and Daniel Clark said, that the public schools are failing. But in the suburbs, public schools are not failing. They're doing very well. In other parts of the city, upper-income parts of New York City, public schools are doing well. So why is it that only in the minority areas of the city is the public school model failing?
Well, there's a couple things that a school like Democracy Prep does well and does differently than a traditional school. We have a much longer school day. We pay our teachers better. We make sure that we have a really tight school culture that has safety and structure for all kids. We make sure that if a teacher is not good, we let them go. And if a teacher is great, we give them a promotion and a raise. And so those are things that every school should be doing. And unfortunately, because of a 165-page contract right now, teachers in New York City can't do that. If you have a bad teacher, they're not going anywhere. They have tenure. They're staying. They may end up in a rubber room. They may end up in the ATR. But they're not going anywhere. And the sad thing about what Senator Perkins...
That's true in the suburbs, too. Most suburban schools are unionized also.
And so what we have now is a model in the urban communities, and this is true across the country. There are hundreds of these schools that we call sometimes no excuses schools, because we don't take any excuses for high performance. We want to make sure every kid succeeds. And those no excuses are proving that low-income, kids of color, kids with special needs, ELL kids, just like at Democracy Prep, are beating Westchester County, right? So our math scores beat Westchester County. And so, Senator Perkins had the luxury of going to private school, but our families don't have that luxury, right? They had a choice and we don't. And then he stands up and says he wants to open schools and keep them open like this. This is the middle school next door. It gets $18,000 a kid to educate the same exact kid. And as you might imagine, red is bad. This isn't test scores. This is the parent, teacher, and student opinion of their own school, right? Then you ask about a school like Democracy Prep. It's a very clear option about what parents, students, and teachers think about us, and we should just make sure we have more schools like Democracy Prep in the same building, serving the same kids as that red school.
We have 10 seconds, Leonie Haimson.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about the fact that DOE, the Department of Education, is trying to close down schools that getting A's in Harlem and elsewhere in their own accountability system to put charters in their space. I'm also very concerned that there are bitter battles going on in neighborhoods all through the city where they see the charter schools stealing classroom space, libraries, and intervention spaces for our neediest special ed students.
That's it. We have no time, but we'll continue to follow the story. Leonie Haimson, Daniel Clark, Seth Andrew, Bill Perkins, thanks for joining us. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Thank you.